Thank you very much indeed. Cabinet Secretary, fellow speakers, conference delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It's always hard to come in after several speakers to retain attention. But the first thing I want to say today is to offer, on behalf of the people of Ireland, our condolences to the delegates from Nepal and all of the Nepalese people, and from India, Bangladesh and adjoining countries, on the dreadful loss and damage of the recent earthquake. What a global tragedy, but what a reminder as we begin our discussions over these few days about the force of nature, about the vulnerability of people and communities to the forces of nature. And many of these we've little control over. But as delegates will be very aware, it's precisely how we can strengthen and work with communities to build their resilience in the in the light of the forces of nature and in response to the impacts of climate change, which makes this conference so important. Ireland. Why is Ireland up here? We've just opened our embassy in Kenya after 26 years, and we're looking forward to really working with the Kenyan government and other partners on really important initiatives like this. Ireland and Kenya this year, you might be aware, are co-chairing the whole post-2015 negotiation process in New York to try and bring to a conclusion by September a new global agenda for sustainable development. And we're working very closely with that. And many of the issues today are very, very central to that agenda. Our former President, Mary Robinson, is now the UN Special Envoy on Climate Change, appointed by the United Nations Secretary General, and also plays an important role in global climate advocacy and justice. And our foreign policy and our development policy puts the need to effectively respond to climate change adaptation right at the centre of our priorities. I note that the theme of your conference for the next few days, and I think also you're coming after visiting some very interesting field projects, is on measuring and enhancing effective cooperation. And even though I use the word every day, I looked up the word effective in the dictionary yesterday. And what is it? It's something that's useful, successful, helpful, valuable, good, and transformative. So that's what we're working towards, to do that, to do it better over the next few days. I was privileged between the years of 2007 and 2011 to lead Ireland's Development Cooperation Programme in Malawi. And trying to work with communities and with governments to better respond to the needs, the adaptation needs of climate change was absolutely central to our programme there. And I want to share some aspects of that experience that might be relevant to your proceedings. I remember going down to the south of the country. There's some delegates from here, from Malawi, down to Nsanji, and speaking with communities around how their life is changing and what climate change adaptation means for them. And one woman in the group spoke, and she said very succinctly, in terms of responding effectively to climate change, what does it mean for her? And what she said is, I want more food to feed my family. Very simple. A lot of this is very complicated, and a lot of our plans and strategies are very complicated, but really, I learned that it's very important to know what your central objective is here. It's not just to meet with global targets, it's not just to meet with national plans, but it's to respond to what people actually know that they need for themselves. And I was very struck by that statement. And in our discussions about trying to respond to that, I want to share with you just 3 lessons. I think the first is that in many communities that are affected by climate change, that they also have other multiple causes to their vulnerability. And that it is very important to situate responses with an understanding of what those multiple causes of their vulnerability is. In Malawi, in many of the communities we work with, people were vulnerable because of an interplay between years of neglect, poor services, gender inequality, chronic malnutrition, endemic HIV, lack of education, yes drought, yes erratic rains, yes crop infestation. The list can go on, and it's different from place to place. Effective responses therefore need to respond to those multiple causes, and planning effective responses to adaptation, I believe, needs to reflect that understanding. Second lesson is that local people, like the woman I've just mentioned, almost always know what the problem is, and almost always know how to respond to it. However, it's remarkable how often people are left out of the picture when we're planning responses. In 2013, when Ireland was chair, the presidency of the European Council, we organised an international conference on the challenges of hunger, nutrition and climate justice, the interrelationship between them. And in planning the conference, our starting point was not the issue itself, but our starting point was that the fact that people most affected by these issues rarely get invited to international consultations to discuss them. And we made it a central imperative, not just the theme of the conference, but the participants, who was going to be there. And we planned the event so that key leaders in global development were placed side by side with people from marginalised communities around the world, and that they could listen and talk to each other. And that the evidence that we're talking about, which is the theme of the conference, can be presented from the mouths of people who are affected themselves. And at the concluding session, a woman representing the Malawian Farmers Institutions stood up and said to the global leaders, "You have to listen to me because I have experience. And what I know is not written in the papers that you get." Interesting. Respecting tacit knowledge and responding to it. Third lesson is about the importance of interlinkages. And we're all aware that, as has been stated, 2015 is an incredibly important year on the international community. We have the post-2015 new framework, we have the UNFCCC COP in Paris, we have a WTO ministerial meeting here in Nairobi, we have the global financing meeting in Addis, and we've just had the DRR conference in Sanda. Big fear is, and it has been stated already, is that these processes, which we're all waiting for and we want to improve, that they're all interconnected, that they're fragmented and they're not interconnected. And that the importance of linking, for example, climate, trade, finance, development and responses, the opportunity for linking those is lost by parallel processes. And these fears may yet come to pass despite efforts trying to anticipate and prevent that from happening. And that silo mentality that we're looking at possibly globally this year works at country level, at district level and at sub-district level. Because in so many instances, government departments, donor agencies, NGOs work side by side according to theme or sector without respecting the need for interconnected thinking and responses. And I'm throwing out a challenge to you this week, is to look at how some practical ways in planning to respond more effectively at community level for breaking down those linkages and working cross-sectorally. So I want to conclude, we're doing a lot of talking here, but I want to conclude by throwing out a challenge to you, delegates, at the start of this conference. I've sat at many meetings like this, and you're there for the week, but my challenge is to actually throw back the theme of the conference meeting this week on your participation, and get you to ask the question, how will you measure the effectiveness of your participation and your contribution to this conference this week? Just going to mention 3 things. And I propose, and I say this in humility and not in any arrogance, but that by the end of the week, that you set a target for yourself, that you have identified and shared something really important from your experience, be it a mistake or be it something very strong that you want to share with the group that's related to the theme. That you challenge yourself about the way you work, individually or as an organisation, and see are there differences that we need to make or that you need to make to more effectively respond to community adaptation needs. And thirdly, that you ask yourself, do you have the skills that you need individually or your organisation to do that effectively, and if not, do you plan to do something about it? And I ask you to come back to those questions on Thursday or Friday in terms of your participation at the event this week. Last week, a Kenyan woman, Phyllis Omido, it was announced that she won the Africa Award for the prestigious Goldman Prize for environmental campaigners. And she won this award because of her heroic efforts in forcing the closure of a lead smelting plant that was poisoning the inhabitants of the slum in Mombasa, and that included her own baby. As committed professionals across a broad range of countries and representing a large number of organisations here, there's a lot we can learn about affecting positive environmental change from her leadership, her courage, her tenacity, and her engagement with her community. And my wish for you is that this week's conference will assist you in planning to effectively bring about such change in the communities in which you work. Thank you.
Thank you.